Dear students, welcome to our lectures in strategic management. Environment can be defined as the forces or institutions surrounding the organization that affect performance, operations, and processes. Actually, it includes all the elements that exist outside the organization boundaries and have the potential to affect the ability of the organization to achieve its goals and objectives. We can identify two types of environment, which are internal and external environments. Before we start in analyzing the environment, we have to define what is environment. Environments or organizational environments are composed of forces or factors, institutions surrounding an organization that affect performance, operations, and resources. So it includes all the elements that exist outside the organization boundaries and they have potential to affect part of the organization or all the organization. So is there a classification of the environments? Yes. The classification of environment could differ from one scholar to another scholar, but mostly agreed that we have two types: internal environment and external environment. And as we see from the figure, we have internal environment, which is the organization structure, vision, mission, and objectives, value systems, which is culture, physical resources and the technological capabilities, human resources. The external environment include two types: task environment, or we can call it competition environment, or operation environment, and the general environment. The task environment is related to customers, labor, competition, suppliers, but the general environment is the environment that affect all the industrial sectors or different industrial sectors at the same time, like economic environment, social environment, cultural environment, technological environment, legal and political environment. The characteristic of this environment is it is general in its effect. Internal environment mostly controllable because the organization can develop, can change, can control the forces inside the organization. But when we come to the external environment, actually, because it's out of control, usually the company or organization try to adapt and also to find solutions for the effect of external environment. But sometimes if the organization is big enough or have the power, they can change or control some of the external environments. So all organizations need to analyze its environment to develop their goals. So the successful organizations develops a system to study the environment on a continuous basis, because actually the external environment is changing and complex. So they try to protect the organization from every possible threats, and to take the advantage of every opportunity by capitalizing on these opportunities, using the strengths and overcoming the weakness inside the organization capabilities. Now we turn to the characteristics of complexity. Means that the organization will be affected by many factors, and these factors actually are interactive together, so the effect will be very complex at the same time. Also, the factors are dynamic, because the organization face changing environment, and as a result of the changing environment, the organization will have to change its internal capabilities, in its internal structure, and also its objectives and strategies. Multifaceted environment means that the environment has different effects on the industries or on organizations. Means that the organization itself could have the same factor, but it will be an opportunity for one organization and a threat for another organization. The far-reaching impact of the environment means that the environment has its effect on the existence of the organization by affecting the growth and the profitability. The impact of environment on different firms with the same industry will be different. For example, if a legislation to put barriers on the exporting rules will affect the big organizations differently from small organizations. Also, another characteristic of the environment is that organizations can have opportunities, at the same time can have a threat because of the external environment. So we have to develop the strategies that can focus on the opportunities and overcome the threatening factors. Change in the environment can change the competitive scenario. If the government, for example, change the regulations to enter a competitive industry, this will affect the ability of new companies to enter the market. Then the market share of each of the current competitors will be affected by the new entrants. Another characteristic is that the change in the environment can sometimes be very fast, and the accuracy to predict the change will be difficult for the organizations. So some environmental factors can be predicted, others cannot be predicted. The predictable environment could be, for example, the increase of the population. Another example of the non-predicted factors, for example, the interest rate, that the government used to deregulate the economic situation to affect the inflation rate or investment rates. Porter five forces analysis. This analysis actually is a method for industry analysis and the business strategy development. So it can be used for analyzing competition of a business by focusing on these factors in the micro environment. It draws from industrial organization economics to derive five forces that will determine the competition of the industry by identifying the attractiveness or the lack of attractiveness of an industry. So it focuses on the profitability of the industry. The five force analysis is based on five factors. First, the bargaining power of supplier, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, the threat of new entrants, and then the industry rivalry. The first force in this model is the threat of new entrants. Actually, profitable markets with high profit will attract new firms to enter this market, and as a result, this will decrease the profitability for all the firms in the industry, unless officials and the government, for example, put barriers, or the companies in the market put barriers. For example, they can block the new entrants by regulations, or the new market could be non-accessible market because of the fixed cost, and the capital is very big to establish the business. Also, the economies of scale means to be profitable in this market, you have to produce and sell big size of products. For example, also if there is product differentiation, you cannot differentiate your product from the current products in the market. The second force is the bargain power of buyers, and this happens when the customer has the ability to put the company under pressure, and this will affect the customer sensitivity to price changes. For example, buyers switching cost can affect the power of buyers. Buyers information availability, availability of existing substitute products, buyer price sensitivity. All these factors can make the customers having more power or less power on the companies. The bargain power of supplier can be another force because suppliers supply different types of raw materials, components, and services for the company. So they also has a type of power over the firm. So suppliers may refuse, for example, to work with the firm or increase prices for the unique supplies and resources. When there are few substitutes and the cost of switching suppliers is high, the degree of differentiation of inputs is high, then the bargain power of suppliers will be high. Threat of substitutes when the customers has the ability to switch to other product and service substitutes. This means that the substitutes are able to satisfy the same needs of customers. If there are substitutes that are many, accessible, cheaper, or better in quality or prices, then the customers will switch directly from the company products and services to substitutes. For example, customers can switch from eating fish to eating meat, or using cell phones instead of landline phones. The final factor or force is the competitive rivalry. This is based on intensity of the competition between the current companies in the market, and this is a major determinant of the competitiveness of the industry. For example, some companies can use competitive advantage to compete. Also, they can use new technologies like online business instead of offline business. And there are some strategies. So companies can use low-cost strategy versus differentiation strategy, or focus on segment of the market based on Porter competitive strategies. Thank you. This is the end of our lecture. See you the next lecture.